The action of the film begins in the autumn of 1943, 8 months after the Battle of Stalingrad. On the bridge over the Dnieper River, German troops are chaotically retreating from the Soviet army. The infantry is covered by a heavy Tiger tank under the command of Lieutenant Philip Gerkens. When the infantry retreated, Philip hesitates to withdraw the equipment across the bridge, which the Nazis have mined to complicate the advance of Soviet troops. The Tiger waits for the enemy to approach, then opens fire, hitting 2 T-34 tanks and spraying the advancing soldiers with machine gun fire. Having knocked out the anti-tank guns, the crew reminds the commander that there are only a few minutes left before the bridge is blown up, and they still need to cross it. Philip gives the order to retreat. Turning around, the Tiger leaves, but in the process, a group of Soviet attack aircraft approaches the bridge. The aircraft open fire on the tank, causing it to catch fire. The burning Tiger races off the bridge with its last strength. The lieutenant notices a frightened fawn on the side, after which the tank entrusted to him disappears in a fiery blaze. The story moves forward in time. Philip, who survived on the bridge, is shaking in the back of a truck with a secret folder. Inside is a new order to search for Colonel Paul von Hardenberg, who is Philip's godfather, as he is the godfather of his son. During the trip, the lieutenant, experiencing the aftermath of the retreat on the bridge, takes a dose of pervitin, an analog of methamphetamine, a synthetic psychostimulant. With the secret order, Philip reaches his crew and tank. They all miraculously survived on the bridge over the Dnieper. Learning that instead of a well-deserved rest, the command rewarded them with a new mission, the crew prepares the equipment for deployment. They are to make their way to a still neutral territory from which the Germans have retreated, but Soviet soldiers have not yet arrived. Having completed preparations, the Tiger sets off on a mission into the dense forests. On the way, they discuss that the sought-after Colonel von Hardenberg, hiding in a secret bunker, was developing a retreat plan from Stalingrad, which is why he knows too much important information that should not fall into the hands of the Red Army. On the way, the tank passes by German soldiers setting up road signs on the country road to make it clearer for their comrades where to go. At night, the tank crew, having stopped for a rest, recalled their escape on the bridge, amazed that they didn't burn alive. Radio operator Keeling asks the commander if it's true that Hardenberg is his godfather. Loader Michel, the youngest of the crew, recalls tales that ghosts inhabit these forests. Locals told him about it during the occupation, but every German knows that partisans in the forest are scarier than ghosts. And the ghosts of partisans are a separate horror. Lieutenant goes first on the night patrol, sending Michel to sleep. The next day, as they move further, Kaling picks up a strange signal, a prayer in Latin, which is surprising since the locals are Orthodox, not Catholic. Adding to the infernal horror are human remains scattered on the roadsides. Advancing along the anti-tank defense line, the Tiger stumbles upon a mass grave where many soldiers have fallen. Finding a gap in the line of concrete obstacles near the fuselage of a crashed plane, the tank turns into the field. There, Philip notices a fallen sign, minefields, and orders a stop. He, along with Michel and Kaling, inspects the area for mines and finds one. The Tiger almost ran over it with a track. When the lieutenant tries to defuse the shell, Michel, who is helping him, notices a grenade under the mine. The guy manages to grab the detonator with his hand, but he finds himself in a deadly trap. Calming his subordinate with words that everything will be fine, the commander orders the driver Hamel to move the Tiger to a safe distance. The equipment must be preserved. Then he returns with a rope to Michel lying on the ground. Tying the mine with the rope, the lieutenant orders the subordinate to slowly and carefully remove his hand so that the weight of the shell presses the grenade's detonator again. When the frightened young man manages to free himself, Philippe takes him to a safe distance behind the tank where he hands him the rope to pull the mine and detonate the grenade underneath. This triggers a chain of detonations in the field, after which the rescued young man joyfully embraces his colleagues. The Tiger resumes its search, search and rescue mission. The lieutenant reminisces about his happy family life before the war, when suddenly a tree near the tank breaks from a shot. The Soviet tankers in ambush missed the armored invader. Determining that an anti-tank obstacle is visible ahead, a Su-100 tank destroyer, Philip orders a tactical retreat. Fire smoke grenades to hinder the Soviet soldiers' aim. Moving out into the field from the thicket, the Germans notice 3 more Soviet vehicles on the flank. Deciding that the tank armor would not withstand a confrontation with superior forces, Philip orders a retreat back to the river. Upon reaching the shore, he orders the crew out and instructs them to prepare the tank for submersion. Theoretically, the Tiger is capable of surviving underwater river crossing, but in practice, they have not done this. Raising all the technological openings and extending the exhaust pipe, the crew returns to the depths of the tank, after which Hamel drives the vehicle straight into the river. The extended exhaust pipe remains above the water's surface, which bubbles from the escaping burning gases. The commander orders to shut off the engine. Despite the driver's objections, he fears the engine might not start again. The tank crew listens in silence to the rumble of Soviet engines outside, a sort of homage to Wolfgang Petersen's film Das Boot. Waiting for the enemy to leave, Philip is in no hurry to command surfacing. He patiently waits, but when water starts seeping in from outside, there is no other choice. On the lieutenant's order, Hamel engages the starter. After a few attempts, the engine starts and the wet Tiger makes it to the opposite bank. This way, they won't have to look for a bridge. Due to recent events, the crew has a slight allergy to this type of structure, plus this maneuver allowed them to save fuel, which they are already short on. Once outside to catch their breath, the Germans resume their journey right in the middle of the night. Out of the commander's generosity, Philip gives the crew pervitin to boost their energy. Soon they come across the glimmers of campfires. In the night, upon closer inspection, the lieutenant realizes that their own people are lingering near the fires. Dismounting, the tank crew goes to a village captured by compatriots, where soldiers are looting the locals and herding residents into barns. The scarred Colonel Krebs is responsible for the operation. Philip, in accordance with a secret order, requests fuel for the mission. Before giving out a couple of barrels, Krebs orders his subordinates to set fire to the barn with the prisoners, locked from the outside. The sight of the brutal execution and the fire brings back unpleasant memories for Philip. After taking the fuel, the tank crew returns to the Tiger, where they spend the night, not wanting to stay near the executioners. Sipping on their small reserves of alcohol, they talk about who they were before the war. Tired of the useless chatter, the lieutenant goes outside to smoke. Outside, he is visited by the gunner Weller, who used to be a winemaker, and invites the commander to visit his farm after the war. In the morning, the Tiger moves further across the vast expanses of Soviet land. When the tank encounters a half-ruined mill, the commander suspects something is wrong. However, von Hardenberg's bunker is right behind the mill, so they need to find a way around it. The Tiger carefully approaches the building when a shot is fired from there, but the shell hits the ground in front of the German vehicle. After moving to a safe distance, the Tiger fires at the mill, after which a Su-100 self-propelled gun, disguised as a haystack, comes into motion. Kelling fires back at the Su with a machine gun, while the driver maneuvers on the commander's orders. The return shot from the Tiger ricochets off the gun mantlet of the Soviet self-propelled gun. The shot from the Su sets the fuel tank of the German opponent on fire. Philip orders to move sideways, forcing the self-propelled gun to constantly adjust its aim. The Germans freeze in place, risking exposure to a hit, but the self-propelled gun, moving forward, falls into a shell crater, exposing the driver's hatch to an accurate shot which leads to detonation and destruction of the self-propelled gun. The crew of the Tiger had barely begun to celebrate their victory when it turned out that Kelling was mortally wounded by shrapnel, his abdomen torn open. At his request, the tankers pulled the dying comrade outside so he can pass away under the sun's rays. After that, they bury him in the nearby forest, leaving his personal belongings on a makeshift birch cross. Then the Germans inspect the Tiger, estimating how much longer the reliable machine can serve. At this moment, Michel steps away to the destroyed self-propelled gun. He sees the charred remains of Soviet soldiers in the explosion-torn hull, then calls the others. The bodies in the self-propelled gun look as if they burned long ago, not half an hour ago. This temporal discrepancy frightens the crew. When the Tiger continues its mission across the endless fields, Gunnar Weller expresses doubt about the advisability of following the order and the commander's personal interest in the matter. He suggests a democratic vote to remove the lieutenant from command, but Michel and Heimel, recalling that Philip has never let them down, remain loyal to the chain of command. Realizing that the mutiny has failed, the lieutenant politely tells Weller that they will not mention this unfortunate incident again. The Tiger sneaks through dense forests in search of the secret bunker. The situation? The complicating factor is that the compass went haywire, preventing orientation with the secret map, but the Germans continue moving in the given direction, recalling various things from their service along the way. During the day, Philip notices footprints ahead in the mud. He orders the tank to stop and the crew to dismount. In the mud, the prints of German boots are visible. Realizing that they were left by people from the bunker, the lieutenant leads his subordinates across the field into the forest, in search of shelter. Michel nearly stumbles upon a tripwire, carefully left for uninvited guests. Stepping over it, the tank crew moves on. In the forest, they see the remains of German paratroopers and suspect that this is the first group sent for Colonel von Hardenberg. In the forest, the compass continues to act erratically, pointing to false targets, but this did not prevent the squad from finding a camouflaged and moss-covered bunker. The crew of the Tiger enters, taking advantage of the absence of sentries around the perimeter. Navigating through the maze of concrete corridors, they reach the bunker inhabitants, who are mired in mindless idleness. Nazi occupiers and their radio operator girlfriends. One of them volunteers to escort Philip to the colonel, but only one officer without soldiers. The lieutenant finds his godfather in a spacious room with a lavishly set table. Von Hardenberg admires the fire in the stove. The tanker notices that his old friend is missing his right hand, a consequence of an injury in Stalingrad, from where he miraculously escaped by cutting off his hand to get out from under the rubble. The colonel reminisces about the past, how he introduced Philip to his wife one beautiful summer when they were cadets at the military academy. Then they remember Stalingrad, where they served together. When they received the order to burn the factory where civilian women and children were hiding, the colonel hesitated to carry it out. Philip had to remind him that they were just following orders. It wasn't their fault, after which von Hardenberg ordered him to burn the factory. Memories of that fire have haunted the tankman ever since. When the lieutenant says he must return him to the unit, von Hardenberg asks what his friend will do if he doesn't comply. At this moment, Philip notices that the dishes on the table are entirely rotten and spoiled with time, crawling with worms. The colonel reminds the guest that there was no secret order, nor was there a Colonel Krebs burning villagers. He is just a part of Philip, a reflection of his guilt and all those oddities that happened to them, like the malfunctioning compass, the crew burning too quickly, the drying, the stopped clocks, and the phone on the bridge. All of this is part of something bigger. In fact, shortly before retreating across the Dnieper, Philip received a message that his wife and son had died in the rear during the bombing of German cities. After that, having lost the meaning of life, the lieutenant delayed retreating at the bridge. And in fact, Colonel Paul von Hardenberg died in Stalingrad just like Philip and his crew remained forever in the burning Tiger. They didn't manage to cross the bridge and fell into the river along with the blown-up span. Everything that happens later is the product of a guilt-ridden dying mind.
The film ends here.